My dear Mark, mic is yours.
Well, Omar, thank you very much indeed. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. We're delighted to be putting on this high-level panel on combating and preventing sexual and gender-based violence, and I'm enormously privileged to be your moderator today. So let me introduce the panel. As Omar said, we're very grateful to have with us Ina Eriksen Søreide, Norway's Foreign Affairs Minister, who is such a champion of women's and girls' empowerment and a tireless advocate against sexual and gender-based violence. We have renowned author and activist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who's written powerfully about the experiences of women and girls in her books, including We Should All Be Feminists. We're also joined by Eleanor Rakes, Vice President and Head of Programme Delivery at the International Rescue Committee, by Christine Season, the Sexual Violence Operations Manager from the International Committee of the Red Cross in South Sudan, and by Fatima Shehu Imam, the founder and Executive Director of the Rehabilitation, Empowerment and Better Health Initiative in Nigeria. And all of them are working daily from operational and policy perspectives to prevent sexual and gender-based violence. I want also to welcome my UN colleagues, Natalia Karnan, the Executive Director of the UN Population Fund, Henrietta Fore, Executive Director of UNICEF, and Kelly Clements, the Deputy High Commissioner for Refugees. This is a time of great challenge. COVID-19 has upended every sphere of our lives. The virus has multiplied threats to human rights and dignity. It's forced us to take a hard and, I hope, honest look at inequalities and how we protect our most vulnerable. COVID-19 threatens to reverse the progress we've made in advancing gender equality and women's rights. Many women and girls have faced gender-based violence, including sexual violence and sexual exploitation and abuse. And in many places, calls to hotlines have increased by 30, 40% or more since quarantine and lockdown measures were put in place. But this is also a moment of opportunity, an opportunity to act fast and in unity while there is global momentum to recover better from the pandemic. So we have to pull together to put girls and women at the center of our efforts through a whole system approach, working with local communities, civil society, governments, regional organizations, donors, humanitarian and development organizations, not just the specialists responsible for work on gender-based violence and responders, but everybody. Leaders in particular have to engage with service providers, gathering information and data on needs and priorities from community-based groups and women's groups. There are a set of reasons why we need to prioritize this at the moment. It's not just that 1 in 3 women will experience some form of physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, and that will be probably worse if the woman has a disability, but because what we're seeing is some of the ways in which COVID-19 is playing out is exacerbating gender-based violence. So we have to prioritize and fund services for survivors of all forms of gender-based violence, and we have to promote the leadership and meaningful participation of women in decision-making, including in leadership levels in the humanitarian community. Above all, we have to address gender inequality, which is the underpinning driver of so many of the problems we're having to address. My office, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, is trying to play its part, responding to and preventing gender-based violence in humanitarian emergencies. We were very pleased last year in May co-host with the government of Norway and others the Oslo conference on ending sexual and gender-based violence. We are, with our Norwegian co-hosts, tracking progress made by member states and organizations on hundreds of political, policy and practical commitments and financial commitments to collectively strengthen accountability for addressing gender-based violence. People made promises in Oslo, and we are tracking whether those promises are being kept, and we hope to share the results at the General Assembly in September. We're also prioritising gender equality and addressing gender-based violence in our response to the pandemic through the Global Humanitarian Response Plan the Secretary General launched for COVID-19. And we're doing this because responding to gender-based violence reduces suffering and saves lives.